Hello there. You are listening to Dogs Run Free. My name is Michael Doherty, and today I am excited to be talking with Paul Marshall, bass player, songwriter, singer for Icy Hawks in LA, and, well, several other fantastic artists. Paul, thank you so much for doing this.
That's my pleasure, Michael. Thank you for asking me to do this. It's really cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a lot to talk about, from Strawberry Alarm Clock up to the Hawks and beyond.
And maybe even pre-Strawberry Alarm Clock.
And pre-Strawberry Alarm Clock. But I actually wanted to start with the band that where I first saw you perform, which is Dixon and Steve Werner.
Fur and Steve.
For those who don't know, Fur and Steve were a folk duo. They did a lot of sort of covers of traditional country songs and other covers, but mainly did fantastic original material.
Fantastic original material.
And they seemed to surround themselves with some of the best musicians of Los Angeles. John McDuffie on pedal steel, Brantley Kearns on fiddle, a name that'll be familiar to you folks for, he played with Jerry Garcia on the Good Old Boys live album that was recorded in the mid-'70s but came out about 5-6 years ago. Also on some of the Hawks albums, Brantley Kearns.
Yes. In fact, he was one of the original members of Icy Hawks.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think he was in the first couple albums.
Definitely the first two, probably going into the third and fourth, possibly too.
And also playing with Fur and Steve, Paul Marshall on bass.
Yeah. They gave me a chance to play the upright bass, which I think I had just bought my first upright bass before they said, "Hey, you want to play with us?" So that was a cool opportunity for me too, to kind of get more familiar with playing the upright.
So they were the first group you played the upright with, and that's...
Yeah, I think so.
How did you get hooked up with those guys?
Well, they used to play frequently at Ronnie Mack barn dance kind of events. I think they played the barn dance several times, and other events like that I think Ronnie was mostly involved with setting up, and that's how I got to know them.
One thing that was...
Before they even got together, Steve used to come out and play guitar with some groups that would play the Elvis birthday bash shows. And then I got to know Steve a little bit then, and then I started seeing him with Fur, and I was like, these guys are great. And so when they invited me to play with them, it was really cool.
One of the really cool things that those guys did was they had these backyard barbecues.
Yes.
And it was basically all musicians. They had a fire pit, and people would gather around. And bikers, right. And some overlap there.
Yeah, overlap, yeah.
But such wonderful nights, and people would gather around the fire pit and trade songs.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of magic in Van Nuys, California.
Yeah.
And one thing I was thinking about with regards to you, so one of the things as a fan of music that I'm always looking for are those moments where the joy is heightened and you sort of slide out of yourself, that the music sort of takes over, and these magical moments. It doesn't always happen, but it happened at those backyard parties, and it happened a lot with the Hawks. So it seems that sort of magic kind of follows you around. And I was wondering if that's something you seek out, or...
I do seek it out, and a lot of times I'll just kind of run into it accidentally, which is sort of how I got with Fur and Steve, just because I was there and I heard them playing, and the same with Icy Hawks. And I'm always looking for great songs, great songwriting, and great singers and vocalists and arrangements. And when I hear that happening, I want to be a part of it. So with the Hawks, it was I heard them play at a barn dance also, shortly after they formed the band. And I was super impressed. And then about a week or two later, I was at Viva Cantina in Burbank, and they were playing there, except they didn't have a bass player that night. So after they were done, I went up to them and I said, "Hey, next time you guys don't have a bass player, give me a call. I'm way better than no bass player at all." And sure enough, my buddy David Jackson had kind of helped start their recording career. He plays on their first album, and he's a great bass player with an amazing history himself. But he's always busy, and so he was the one who didn't show up, and then he didn't show up, and then he couldn't make the next gig. And after about 3 or 4 of those, they said, "Well, do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah."
Nice. Wow, I didn't know that story. I didn't know how you and then the cantina in Burbank that you're talking about, that's gone now.
It is gone. I think it still exists as a restaurant, but it had a great musical history there for a couple of decades, where they had a big back room where a band would be playing, sometimes a whole big band, and the front room where another band would be playing, and miraculously they didn't get in each other's way at all. So it was really a great setup for music, and they had a lot of tequila too.
That's true. Every once in a while the sound would bleed in if they had a solo acoustic act in the front room and a rock band at the back
you might hear a little bit of it, but it didn't really get in the way of either performance.
It really didn't. And I saw some big band jazz in the back room.
And for the last years of its existence, Cody Bryant was doing most of the booking and and setting up all the musical shows and things. And Cody's a great musician and singer himself, so he kind of knew what to look for, and he was a good booker for that room.
Well, let's go back in time now.
Okay.
So the Strawberry Alarm Clock, you joined in 1969. Now, they had already been around for a few years, so they already enjoyed some success.
Their big hit was in 1967.
Incense and Peppermints.
Yes.
Yeah. But prior to that, you had a band in high school.
Yes.
Is it the Beauchamans?
The Beauchamans.
Beauchamans.
If we had spelled it differently, I think we'd have had more success, because I'm sure a lot of disc jockeys looked at the record and went, bo, and tossed the record,
Well, you had the single "My Lovin' Baby" that you co-wrote, and then the flip side was a really pretty rendition of Shenandoah.
Yes, Shenandoah. Yeah, the old folk song.
Yeah. Was it based on the strength of that single that got you the gig with the Strawberry Alarm Clock?
No, they didn't know anything about that, and I didn't really know that much about them either. But what happened was I was visiting my girlfriend's brother's apartment, and this was in Toluca Lake, and it was one of those apartments where you go into a hall, and there's an apartment on one side, and then there's an apartment on another side. And well, his door was open, and then the door across the hall was open, and there was a party going on there, and there was nothing going on at my girlfriend's brother's place. So I walked across the hall and started hanging out at this party. It was 1969. It was just not a problem.
Right.
So I eventually I was sitting on the couch, and a guy was sitting next to me, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, I got a problem." He said, "I got a band, and we're scheduled to go on tour in 2 weeks, and our lead singer just quit. Do you know anybody who can sing lead?" And I said, "Yeah, me." And he said, "Really? Well, here." And he took a piece of paper and wrote down an address in Hollywood, and he said, come here Monday night, come to this place Monday night and do an audition.
It was that loose.
It was that fortuitous and that coincidental. And so I said, great, and I showed up, and I did an audition, and I got the gig as the lead singer for the Strawberry Alarm Clock.
And you're playing guitar, too, at that point.
I was, but they didn't want me to play guitar in the band.
Oh.
They just wanted me to stand there and sing, which I thought was weird, and I had never really done that before. I'd always played guitar and sung, but they had Mark White's on keyboard and Ed King on guitar. Lee Freeman was playing bass at the time, and Gene Gunnels was playing drums, and for them that was enough. And they probably also thought, he's going to have to learn all these songs to sing. Why burden him with guitar stuff? So I stood there with a mic for a few months on gigs, just standing there and trying to move in some interesting way and singing these Strawberry Alarm Clock songs. And then after a few months, Mark decided that he'd had enough, and he quit. And then they said, "Well, Paul, you play guitar. Go get your guitar, and we'll be 2 guitars, bass, and drums. We're doing songs that are more like that anyway now." So that's the way we went on for the next couple of years.
Was it difficult coming into a band that already had established its sound? Like, did you feel restricted at all as far as your
No, I was so happy to have a gig because I had come back from Santa Barbara with the band. I'd been going to school there. I dropped out. I was with a band that was up there, kind of a rock band, but I was also getting into country, a lot of country music, and so the whole band moved from Santa Barbara down to Los Angeles. We did a few gigs down here, a few cool gigs, opening for Hoyt Axton at Ledbetter's, things like that. And then after a couple of months of being down here with them, they fired me. They said, "We like you, Paul, but you're really too country for us." So I had no band and I had no gig. And then it was just like a month or two later when I had this chance meeting with the Strawberry Alarm Clock's drummer and got that gig. And evidently they didn't think I was too country because they weren't doing any country.
They weren't doing any country.
but that's how that happened.
One thing they did do was perform in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yes.
Where we can see, in that we can see you with the guitar.
Yes.
And
a mustache.
And a mustache. It's a crazy movie.
Crazy.
It's a crazy. Do you have any memories or any anecdotes from that?
Well, we were on our episode of filming at the party scene.
Yeah.
Took about 2 weeks to film on set, and other than that, I had no idea what the movie was about. All I knew was here's this crazy, faux Hollywood party.
Yeah.
And I was, I was astounded by what was going on. I don't think I'd been on a movie set before, so it was interesting. Russ Meyer was interesting. I had a vague idea that Roger Ebert, who was very young, was involved, and he was there too. Very impressed with the women, who were very attractive, and Dolly Reed was just as sweet as anybody could be. Most of the people there were really nice, but Dolly was especially friendly and especially sweet to us, and that was nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward about a decade now.
Okay.
So Grateful Dead fans are probably aware that Brent Mydland, while he was a member of the Dead, recorded a solo album.
Yes.
So that
I don't know if many people would be aware of that because it was never released.
It was never released, but it recorded in 82 into 83.
1980.
Oh, even earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
That all happened in 1980.
And the song Tons of Steel,
yes,
which eventually would be on the Grateful Dead's In the Dark album in 87,
yes,
originally was on this.
That's right.
And then also Maybe You Know, or also called Maybe You Know How I Feel, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dead didn't put that on a record, but they performed it half a dozen times.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, you were playing bass.
Yes, I'd switched to bass.
So before we get into the Brent Mydland, I'm just curious what led to the switch from guitar to bass?
Well, what happened was, so I'd been playing guitar now in the Alarm Clock when they said, okay, Paul, get your guitar. And then Ed was a great musician, Ed King, and he'd do these leads and he'd show me how to play the twin leads. So I was playing twin leads with Ed, and I was playing guitar daily, and I thought I was, pretty good. I mean, I had no grand illusions about how good I was, but I was good enough, I thought. And so when the band broke up in '71, I auditioned for the Everly Brothers gig because they were looking for a guitar player and a drummer. And the drummer, Gene Gunnels from the Alarm Clock, auditioned, and an old drummer friend of mine who'd actually been a drum roadie for the Alarm Clock for a while, Mike Porter, fantastic drummer, he auditioned for them. And I auditioned on guitar. And the Everly Brothers weren't there. It was an SIR studio. Warren Zevon was the keyboard player, musical director for the Everly Brothers. Wow. So he was auditioning us. So I took my guitar down and I played, and I didn't get the gig. And Gene Gunnels did get the gig, our Alarm Clock drummer, and he played with them for the next few years. I didn't get the gig, and when I heard the guitar player who got the gig, Waddy Wattell.
Oh.
Waddy Wattell got the guitar gig. And if you know of Waddy, you know he ended up playing with Ronstadt and a bunch of other people.
Everybody.
And when I heard him play, I went, well, no wonder I didn't get the gig. Listen to this guy play. He plays rings around me. I can't do. I said, I've always liked what the bass does in a band. And plus, I'd been listening to all this country music, which early 70s, 71, 72, it was all outlaw country and Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
A lot of the bass was just 1-5-1, boom, dum, dum, dum. I thought, man, I'm going to get a bass. I like country music. I'm going to get a bass. I'm going to learn to play it, and I'm going to see if I can see how it goes. Well, it went really well because I started getting bass gigs, and then I got a touring bass gig, and then I figured out that if you can play bass and sing at the same time, and your singing's not bad, and you can hear harmonies, which all of those things I could do, you're never out of work. And that's the way it was. I was after that, I was always working as a bass player.
And you play bass on this unreleased Brent Mydland album. How did you hook up with Brent?
Well, what happened was I had been playing around town with different bands and different people, and one of the guys I was playing with a lot was a drummer. At the time, his name was John Masseri. Now he goes by John Lee White, and a fine drummer. And he had worked with Brent before Brent got with the Grateful Dead. He had worked with Brent with a band called Silver, and maybe a couple other situations. And he became really good friends with Brent, and stayed in touch with him after Brent got in the Dead. And so when Brent decided that he wanted to do a solo album, he contacted John. He said, "I want you to play drums on my, on this record project I've got planned, and you got any bass players, down there who are any good?" And so John named like 2 or 3 bass players. I was one of them. Did an audition, got the gig.
Nice.
And I spent about a month up in Concord and San Rafael. Concord is where Brent was living, and I just stayed at his house. And San Rafael is where the Dead's big warehouse studio was.
Yeah.
And that's where I spent the next month recording Brent's solo record project.
Now, there's a rumor that Jerry Garcia came in for one day and recorded a guitar part to a song.
It's quite possible, but I wasn't there when that happened. If that happened, I wasn't there.
So the rumor will persist. We can't say one way or the other.
But I met Bob Weir and Phil, and a few of the other. Mickey Hart came by, and so I met a few of those guys.
Nice.
And I ended up going to being backstage at a few of their concerts after that, because Brent said, "Hey, you want to come?" And I went to these concerts, and that that became part of Icy Hawks's song, "I Fell in Love with the Grateful Dead."
That's the next thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Icy Hawks in LA have a song called "I Fell in Love with the Grateful Dead."
Yeah.
It came out on the 2012 album New Kind of Lonely, if I remember
that.
right.
Yeah, I think so.
And each verse, so it was co-written by you and Rob Waller and Paul Lax.
Yes.
And as I understand it, each verse reflects a different member's experiences getting turned on to the Grateful Dead.
More or less, yeah.
So which verse is yours?
So mine is more of the bridge thing where it goes, it wasn't literal, because it was written as, "My lady knew the crew, so I was granted backstage," but I was granted backstage from Brent, not from my lady. And ate organic vegetarian curry and rice, sat down in the wings in the hardwood floor. It's very loose. It's a very loose adaptation of what actually literally happened,
right.
But it's true enough.
That was my guess, based more sort of on what the other verses were, because I was like, well,
yeah,
it's such a good song, and you co-wrote or wrote quite a few good songs with Icy Hawks in LA, including a more recent one, "Salvation," that I just absolutely love.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, that was going to be on the next album.
It will be on the next album.
Okay, that was my question. So how far along is that project?
I would say, we're halfway through it, and then of course with Paul's passing, everything kind of stalled, and we're just kind of figuring out how to get it going again. But we're definitely committed to finishing it up, and we're committed to keeping the band alive because there are three of us, and we all love all these songs, and the songs are good, and it would be a shame in our minds to let them kind of lie fallow or just exist as recordings when we can still go out and play them. So we're going to be playing more gigs.
I'm so glad to hear that, because you guys did a show.
It'd be honoring Paul, too.
Absolutely. It felt that way. You guys did a show at the Maui Sugar Mill Saloon recently.
Yes.
With the three of you, and then with Dan Wistrom.
Dan Wistrom, yes.
Sitting
Excellent player.
And yeah, that we talked about the magic before, and it was I want to say like a relief, but also I guess I should have expected, but the magic was there. And
the magic is still there.
It's in those songs. It's in the spirit.
Yeah.
And you could feel Paul there, and it was tremendous. So I'm really glad to hear that you guys did not bill that show as a Hawks show.
Yeah. We weren't quite ready to do that yet, and Victoria's especially sensitive, and Rob and I completely understand. So we just want to ease our way back into being the new version of I See Hawks in L.A. Not very different from the old version, but not exactly the same either. But we want to keep it going, and Victoria feels that way too.
I'm really
Rob and I are so happy about that, and Dan is pretty happy too because he likes playing with the band, and we really enjoy playing with him. He fits the band very well.
He does. I've seen him play with several other bands and artists over the years, and he's got a tremendous talent.
Yeah, we had all seen him play with various bands, and none of us had ever actually played with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wait, before, because I know you guys did a wedding gig before that one. So that was the first time that he'd ever played with you guys at all? Anything?
Except for a few rehearsals to get ready for the wedding gig, yeah. But that was the first time playing live with us in front of people. And that was kind of a nice way to ease into it because we were way up on the east side of the Sierras in a little community, and I don't think anybody knew who we were, so no expectations. And it's a wedding, so everybody's going to be happy, And drinking. And just having a good old time. So that was, I don't think we could have found a better kind of first gig to do as us without Paul, and so having Dan there was great. And then our frequent accordion accompanist, Richie Lawrence, came over from Sacramento to play that gig with us. So that made it even easier, and a nice transition.
Well, and then in your second gig, the Maui Sugar Mill Saloon, you guys closed with one of my absolute favorites, another song that you wrote.
Yes.
If You Lead, I Will Follow.
Yes.
Such a beautiful song.
Thank you.
And you had also written songs prior to the Hawks that other artists have recorded.
Yes.
So, including what is this? You co-wrote a song that Juice Newton recorded for her 1987 LP, Emotion. Someone Believed.
Someone Believed.
How
yes.
was that sort of writing for hire? Did that song exist before that?
No. The song existed prior to her recording it, and Highway 101 also put it on their first album, their eponymous album, which actually sold much better than Juice's album. And they did a great job of it too. And what happened was I had started writing with a bass player songwriter named Johnny Pierce and his wife Joanna, and we committed to writing almost like they do in Nashville, where we were going to get together on a regular basis and write. And we must have written 20 or 30 songs within a couple of year period before they decided they would move to Nashville, and then it became a little more difficult to get together and write because they were so far away, and we hadn't yet got the computer thing. The internet hadn't really come into existence yet. So I wrote that song with them, and it was we were just writing songs to write songs. We weren't really writing for anybody. Another song we wrote called "Working Man's Hands" was recorded by Patti Loveless
Oh, nice.
on her album "If My Heart Had Windows," and it was unfortunately it was not her big breakout album. It was the one right before it. If it had been her big breakout album, I'd probably be living in a much nicer house. But it was very good, you know. And so yeah, Patti Loveless, Juice Newton, Highway 101, Jill Sobule.
Well, that's another one I wanted to talk about. Grace of My Heart is a movie that I wish more people would see.
Right?
I love that movie. I mean, starring the incredible Ileana Douglas.
Yes.
I mean, the whole cast.
I love Ileana.
I love her too.
Yeah.
And Jill Sobule is in it.
She's in it and
performing a song, "Truth Is You Lied,"
Yes.
that you co-wrote.
Yes.
So that came from that earlier period too, because this is probably about 9 years after Juice Newton's album came out.
Yeah,
mid '90s,
something like that. Yeah.
So that song, did that song exist? So that wasn't written for the movie either then?
That song sort of was written for the movie.
Oh.
Because my co-writer on that, Mark Fossen, he'd been working with a band called the Bum Steers, and we'd worked and played and written together on various projects, and then just to write for probably 2 or 3 years before that song was written. So we were good friends. We loved to hang out. We loved to write, and he kind of knew what we were writing for. That they were looking for something, more of a period piece.
Yeah.
And that's what we got together to write. But we struggled to come up with a song. And we sat around for a couple of hours going through idea after idea after idea, and not having that spark and go, okay, yeah, that's it. So I'm looking through my list of song ideas in this great big notebook, and I finally go, hey, how about this one, Mark? "Truth Is You Lied. What do you think about that?" And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "Where did you go?" And then the song just wrote itself after that, and we just came up with line after line after line, and within, 45 minutes or an hour, the song was done. And then we presented it to the director of the movie.
Oh, Alice. Allison. Wait, who directed it?
Allison Anders,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So Allison and Mark were actually related. They were kind of cousins.
Oh.
And so, the town. It helps if you know somebody. And so that's how he knew that the project was happening. So we presented that song to them at kind of the way I sing it now, as sort of an old country shuffle. But they were very, very brightly envisioned it as a slower, more heartfelt ballad, a la Brenda Lee's "I'm Sorry." That was their model for, we'll take this song, we'll arrange it like that, and have Jill Sobule sing it. And Ron Carter played bass on it, and for me that was like, Ron Carter played bass on a song I wrote. All right,
It's a beautiful moment in the movie. It's a great song, and then you had your own version on your solo album.
Yes.
On Weed and Water.
Weed and Water, yeah.
It's a great album. We were
Thank
talking
you.
about that before we started recording.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to record another solo album then?
A lot of people ask me about that, and a lot of people want me to do that.
I can see why.
And I would do it in a minute if I didn't have to do everything else that's involved with making an album. It's so it's just so, there's so much that doesn't involve music, and so I don't know, maybe I will someday. I've got songs, but I really like it when other people record my songs.
Yeah.
It feels It's an honor, and it's great. It's a great feeling, and it's fun to listen to. And I think of all that work I didn't have to do. All I had to do was write it and give it to them, and then there it is.
Well, and speaking of your songs, are you up for treating us to a song?
I'd be very happy to. I have my guitar here. I have a pick here.
And then what are you gonna do for us today?
Well, I'll do a song off my Weed and Water album that's morphed a little bit since I recorded it,
Okay.
with just a couple of lyric changes. That ought to work, right?
Yeah.
You ready? It's called If I Had You. I need a cool spot on a hot day, with the work half done and the bills half paid. When the dragonfly hovers above the dogs where they lay, I need a cool spot where the bluebird sings. And if I had you, I'd have everything. I need a warm bed on a cold night, when the stars above are shining bright, and the fields around are clear and white. I need a warm bed where I can dream, and if I had you, I'd have everything. This worn out hat would be my crown, this old Ford would be our limousine when we ride around. If I had you, I could say I'm king of the world in my own way. I need a long vacation, like a cruise ship tour, endless beaches and distant shores, where the weather is perfect. Who could ask for more? I need a long vacation where the phone don't ring. Then if I had you, I'd have everything. This worn out hat would be my crown, this old Ford would be our limousine when we ride around. If I had you, I could say I'm king of the world in my own way. I need a cool spot on a hot day. I need a long vacation, got to get away. I need a warm bed.
Oh, that's so good. That is such a good song.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we go?
We covered a lot of ground.
We covered a lot of ground.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's all good.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's been a super treat for me.
Well, that's great. Thanks again for having me, Michael.
And thank you guys for listening. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can keep doing this. All right. Thanks, guys.